Hello, my name is Matt. Welcome to Unbearable 73. Well, unfortunately, it's time to review Amazoff's Rings of Prime, Season 1, Episode 1. This episode is purely a review. I will be critical of the lore only as it is self-consistent with the Rings of Power's own internal story. Since Amazon doesn't have the rights to almost all the lore, they had to make stuff up. I will do a separate video breaking down at least some of the lore deviations from each episode from the actual lore, presumably I don't have a stroke, in the other video, because I want this to be just about what I see on the screen. Okay? So let's start with the production stuff. On the visuals, the show did have some nice background scenery and so forth. A couple of the rendered settings and whatever. I mean, you can see some of the people who weren't the actors or the writers or the directors, like the stagehands and grips and all, doing. They were trying to make some things look okay. You know. On direction, the director of this episode was J.A. Bayona. I have never seen this director anything they've done before, and based on this episode, I probably don't want to. The first episode was full of exposition where characters talked and explained and talked and explained what was going on for no in-show logical reason. In other words, when they were explaining stuff to one another, if they were in the middle of a fight with, say, I don't know, an orc, and one was saying, well, orcs they're not weak individually, but there's a lot of them because they spread all the place after Melkor lost his war, they spread all over and they fight people en masse. That would have been a good, cool way to sort of explain, how orcs all over the place as a side note and whatnot. No, instead we just get an exposition that when Galadriel gives her flashback. So this is the director's responsibility to deal with, to understand the pacing and control the methodologies in the story. And another example, instead of showing a flashback for the first 15 plus minutes, have it open with Galadriel teaching young elven children, maybe telling some of the stories. Right. That would actually fit the style of Tolkien, by the way. For those who don't know, the gimmick behind Tolkien's Legendarium is that he discovered old documents and translated them, which were the writings of a character named Elfline, or Iriel, who lived in the 9th century. Iriel was a descendant of Irindil the Mariner, and because of that, he therefore had sort of link and privilege to sort of go to the to be considered the high men, so to speak. So he on an ocean trip, he actually was able to take the straight road to Valinor, landed on Toleracia, the island outside Valinor that humans are allowed to occasionally go to, and the elves there revealed to him the history of the lost history of the world. And then, obviously, he wrote that stuff down, and then centuries later, Tolkien, the scholar Tolkien, found it. That's the gimmick behind it, So, and that with the context of the gimmick, The Hobbit is Bilbo's journey, his journal about his journeys. Lord of the Rings is mostly Frodo with a bit of Bilbo, and then Sam finishing at the end, and then getting stuff from Merry and Pippin and others to add into the appendices. Frodo basically wrote the Lord of the Rings. And Tolkien translated it. So on the acting, I can't blame most of the actors for what they did. They basically acted the roles they were given, but special attention can be given to a couple who need to be called out. The role of Arondir, a Sylvan Elf, is played by Ismael Cruz Cordova. Perhaps played is too bit a strong word because he must come from the Nicolas Cage school of acting. This literally had one facial expression, and it's almost every scene he's in, he uses that one facial expression. The role of Gil-galad is played by Benjamin Walker. If you follow his eyeline, he's always looks like he's looking down at a spot on the floor 5 to 10 meters away with his eyes. Not with his head, like he's actually looking, but with his eyes. His eyes are pointed down at something. And his facial expressions always lack energy. He's playing an immortal being who should be filled with energy, except in extreme circumstances like war. Elves are robust humans. Anyway, that's the lore. I mean, he shouldn't be seen tired all the time. What else? So on the writing, we'll go on to the writing now. Sorry about that. The entire first episode is written like someone just outlined a series of events, wrote some dialogue for some characters to say, and described some set pieces, but made no effort to have anything happen. We just have flashes of parts of events, not events treated as action scenes as you have a chance to immerse yourself in them. So, if you think about, the War of Wrath. That's what it's called, even though they can't call it that. We just saw flashes of that. We didn't see a battle scene with Galadriel and our people going into the battle, so we could immerse ourselves in it. We didn't see. We just saw a chunk of one of the two trees going out. We didn't actually see some sort of depiction of Morgoth and well, they don't have the rights to it, but they could have depicted it. I mean, Melkor and Ungoliant did it, but they don't have the rights to it. But they could have shown Melkor cutting a tree down or something. I mean, point is, when they show a scene of things occurring, not just a tiny chunk of that scene, you have a chance to get immersed in the scene and follow it, and it becomes memorable. Now, on the special effects, costumes, and scenery, unlike many, I'm not going to come with too much about the CGI. It worked for what we were presented with, even with just expressing unspectacular material. I almost said unexpressing spectacular material. That would have been weird, but true in a way. However, the costuming was atrocious. Okay, the Noldor Elves' entire visual gimmick in this show seems borrowed from how the movie Gladiator depicted the Romans. Go back, look at the gold that the Emperor was wearing. That's what Galadriel has on. Look at the laurel crowns. The Romans had laurel crowns in Gladiator, at least. The material for most of their costumes resembled the materials I've encountered in motel furnishings. Literally, when I saw Elrond's green cloak and his people's green outfits for the first time in the trailers, the first thing that came to mind was the material they make curtains for in motel rooms. That's the first thing. Furthermore, this show seems to be following the trope or myth that poor and middle-class peoples in medieval times around the world didn't bathe or make efforts to keep themselves clean, and the ratty, tattered clothing most wore followed along with that theme. Okay? Also, if Heartfeet women folk are not going to wash their faces, why are they wearing all that blush makeup constantly? The scenery at times, and I'm referring to the long view landscape shots, were pretty good, and there was some attention to set detail. But at times, like many things in the show, seem to have borrowed concepts from other stuff. Sometimes I remember something, I know that's borrowed, but I won't remember for weeks later. Oh, that's where that came from. It took me about a month and some help from Mando and Elijah talking to remember the blatant ripoff of Gladiator that they're doing for the show for the Noldor. On the sound and audio, there's not a lot to complain about here. The music was okay to bland. So nothing that drew you in. On the plot, now onto the plot. I want to reiterate one more time, I will not be discussing deviance from the lore in this video. This video is intended to be an objective, or at least as objective as possible review of the show as I can stomach, okay? So the show opens with Galadriel's backstory either being revealed as a flashback or as a rapid time skip from the perspective of setting her up as the main character. It was what it was. But do we really have to have a scene with the bullying? Was that really necessary to convey this? Until a plot point of view, from a plot point of view, it might have helped to open with the scene at Autumno, which is the name of the fortress she and her companions went to, even if they don't say that in the show, and I don't think they have rights to it. And then reveal the massive flashbacks during the episode as she talks about, like when she says to Elrond, "You have not seen what I have seen." Then tell a chunk of that story, In particular, when Galadriel is about to be taken to paradise on the ship, they could have had a fuller flashback to the scenes with her brother, not just the one scene, but to all of them, and including his death in there. Space that out a little bit, put it in some other context, and it becomes less of a trudgery of exposition. That would have allowed the audience to get into the plot right away with that raid on Autumno, by the way, and the explanation and all that, as opposed to just sort of trundling along a bunch of exposition and having a combat scene. Also, from a plot point of view, they tried to do too much in this episode. I did a video several months ago going over the timeline and the lore that they were attempting to compress into the series, and you can already see the problems this caused. For example, it would have been much more intriguing to have the scene where Meteor Man crashed down be the first introduction to the Heartfeet, and have Nori's interaction with him be how we learned about the Heartfeet as a people. Also, the plot goes out of its way to make humans seem like a species of crapbags. The Heartfeet have to hide from them. Sadoc's first scene is literally smelling for humans, like they're innately smell bad or something. They also have to monitor them, because for 1,000 years ago, they served a god, what in the show as a god. On the crossing over to the Undying Lands, the scene and method is what it is. I mean, granted, they don't have access to the actual lore, so they have to make up their own mythology, how things work. However, the shipboard ritual doesn't work for me. It has no explanation or reasoning other than the symbolic putting down your sword. Yet in Galadriel's literal flashbacks reveals they could even be attacked in the Undying Lands. So why put down your sword? Why is that relevant? Arondir's intro with his guardianship of the evil humans is clearly a setup for events in Numenor with regard to Farazan usurping the kingship with Sauron as advisor, and then the Numenorians, retaking humanity from the elves. Final note: the symbol that represents Sauron looks like an eye of Sauron from a side angle. So that could be what they're doing, kind of making the eye of Sauron, but they don't have rights to the one from Peter Jackson films, obviously, so they're trying to get their own version of it in here. Finally, I can probably talk more about this episode alone, just in terms of pulling apart the plot. But in reality, the purpose of this review is not to go scene by scene and break it down, but to express my perception of problems the show has, at least the main problems, above and beyond ignoring the actual content of their own material. The title of the show is Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. Celebrimbor should literally be the main character, since he, forged the One Ring, forged all the other rings other than the One Ring. I don't think Celebrimbor even has 2 minutes of screen time in the first episode. I also think that the time compression has shot down any attempt to make a cohesive story in the foot. Okay, or that was worded badly. I apologize. From objective a point of view as possible, this episode is a 3 out of 10. It has some nice background visuals. The audio music is okay at times, if not memorable. And they did catch a few things correctly. The elves being immune to disease. When Arondir cut the abscess open on the cow, and he put the gunk went in his hand, he wasn't even worried. A normal disease won't affect an elf. Whether they know that, in the lore or not, I don't know, but it wouldn't. And also the elves being immune to extremes of temperature. They showed that at points too. On the other hand, the fight scene with the ice troll was utterly deplorable. Okay, turning Galadriel into Xenaladriel, warrior princess, was comical, and also the constant look of constipation on Elrond's face is annoying. Contrast that with Hugo Weaving, even when he wasn't serious, like when he was happy, looked happy. He had facial expressions when he played Elrond. The humans are evil, thought to be evil. All the elves in the Harfoot, that's also atrocious. Okay, it's atrocious thought pattern in the show, and they're doing it on purpose. Okay, they're doing it on purpose. Anyway, comment down below if you have any questions for me about this video. Please share your thoughts. Share this video if you enjoyed it. Like if you like, dislike if you dislike. Subscribe if you want to hear more from me. My name is Matt. This has been Unbearable 73. Have a nice day, and I am out of here.